Hey, chiropractors, welcome to Modern Chiropractic Mastery with your host, Dr. Kevin Christie, where we discuss the latest in marketing, business, and professional growth with some of the leading experts in the industry. Hey, docs, welcome to another episode. In this one, we've got a great interview with Alec Broadfoot of VisionSpark. And, a lot of times I will test the audience and ask what are some of the things we're struggling with. And I actually asked our mastermind group this back in St. Augustine with some of the broader topics or certain things they would like to hear. And a lot of that was on hiring, talent acquisition, hiring processes, getting employees to really be engaged and really find that on a scalable way of whether it's front desk folks, doctors, mid-levels. And so I'm excited to have Alec on this podcast. He's with VisionSpark, and through VisionSpark, Alec engages mid-market companies across the country in hiring, training, key leader searches, behavioral interviewing, and personality assessments. And we touch on a lot of those topics in here. And he actually is kind enough to give us a free resource that you can access from the show notes. And so we dive into the current, positives and negatives of hiring that we're hearing about. And it's a conversation that I haven't really had on the podcast yet. And so I was excited to bring him on to lend his expertise. And he's done a ton in this field as a foremost authority in it. And I'm excited to be able to pick his brain for about 45 minutes on hiring and really positioning yourself in your clinic as a place where people want to work as well. I think sometimes we forget about that aspect of it. Is your office something to be desired? Like, do people want to work there? Is it attracting talent? Is it keeping talent? And so we dive into that in this interview. So without further ado, here is my interview with Alec Broadfoot. Before we get to the episode, I want to tell you about my friend and colleague, Dr. Holly Tucker of chironumbers.com. Have you been in practice a few years now and you're wondering when your business will start to reward you financially? Are you so overwhelmed with the day-to-day business management that it is hard to see your success? Or are you trying to expand your team and worried about the impact to the bottom line? Dr. Holly is a certified profit-first professional and a chiropractor herself, who has managed multiple practices over the past 10 years and consults specifically on implementing the cash flow system of Profit First for chiropractors. Simplify the way you look at stats, metrics, and your own compensation through this methodology by working with someone with unique experience in your business model. Visit bit.ly/chironumbers to get your guide and video training. Download the first 2 chapters of Profit First and subscribe to her weekly 5-minute Friday series on profitability. Start to feel less overwhelmed, avoid burnout, and clean up your finances so you can focus on patient care. Again, that's bit.ly/chironumbers for access to Dr. Holly's resources. I hope you enjoy this week's podcast. All right, welcome to the show, Alec. I really appreciate your time. I'm excited to dive into all things kind of talent acquisition, hiring, retention. Obviously, being in 2022, it's a hot topic. And so I'm excited to have you on today. So tell us a little bit about yourself, personally, professionally, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I am the owner and visionary of a company called VisionSpark, and we help companies all over the country find and hire great leaders for their team.
Yeah, it is interesting how we connected through Strategic Coach 10X and a couple other members, and you've been doing a lot. You mentioned being the visionary, which I just love, the idea of the visionary integrator. And I know when we had chatted a bit, you have a very cool niche where you also really try to find integrators for company. Can you just touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, so an integrator is the number 2 in the company. Sometimes they're called second in command. If we advertise the role, we'll most likely use a title like COO. But essentially, a visionary, we want them in their unique ability. We want them where they're having fun and they're joyful and they're really creating a lot of value for their business. And we don't want the visionary in places where they're not good at, they don't like, that causes them stress. And so usually that's running day-to-day operations, um, leading teams, leadership meetings. EOS calls it LMA, lead, manage, and hold accountable. And so a lot of visionaries, they like the leadership part, but they don't necessarily like the management part. And so that integrator role, that COO role, is really for organizations that the visionary wants to focus on bigger things. They want to work on the business and strategy and new products and services, and they have someone in there that can help run their business, run the day to day.
Yeah, and I like the terminology because when you use COO for businesses, a lot of people think, oh, it's got to be, a multinational company or,
Mm-hmm.
a massive corporation to be a COO. Whereas, you give a business of 10 or whatever and have a visionary and an integrator. And recently, that's something I've gotten super clear on for myself as I've actually exited patient care is I'm acting as the visionary, and I boiled my unique ability down to one word, and it's creating. But then underneath that, it's kind of three subgroups, which is vision, so creating vision, content, creating content, and relationships, creating relationships. And that visionary part of it has been huge. But up until recently, I really haven't had a good situation as far as having an integrator for my two companies. And luckily, Dr. Jesse Cease has really taken on that role, and it just fit perfectly. I gave him the book Rocket Fuel, and he read that. I'm reading that book Pinnacle that you recommended for me. I'm going to have him read that. So it's fascinating. I think it applies better for many of our clinics than say, having someone that's your COO. That's a tough,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it's usually a tough position to fill of a chiropractic practice.
Yeah, and we've helped companies as large as 1,000 employees to, a recent client we hired, or they hired us, helped them find an integrator. It was as small as 5, right? They were ready to have someone in place, and of course they weren't, they couldn't pay a big salary, but they were able to fill that role with someone to help run their business. And they've gotten tremendous freedom, and they're loving their life, and a new passion for their business because they have someone running the day to day.
That's cool. And I want to segue a little bit into, again, this was some pre-chat we had. You were recently on a call or podcast with Shannon Waller, and it was the topic of innovation manager. What is that, and how is that different than maybe say a visionary or an integrator, or maybe it is similar?
Yeah, so an innovation manager is completely different. It's a different role. An innovation manager is not going to have any direct reports. So that word manager is they're more managing projects than people. So it doesn't really fit in terms of what EOS and their accountability chart. But I would describe it as if the owner of the business is the visionary, they're the creator, they have ideas. The innovation manager, as strategic coach designed it, is someone who takes those ideas and to see if they have any merit, any legs to them. And so, if I'll use the example. I don't know if this is a good example, but Thomas Edison, an inventor, that's the visionary, and the innovation manager would be the lab. The mad scientist in the lab trying to see if things could work. And so that's really what it is. And so if visionaries had someone that they have new ideas. Well, why don't we try this service? Or maybe we could, offer this to this type of sector. That innovation manager can do some research and see if there's any runway to those ideas.
Okay. And then if there does that then get integrated by the integrator?
Yeah. So in the spirit of things, right, you don't want the visionary to, have a lot of false starts because okay, we're doing this now, or this is our new service offering, or this is our new product. And 2 minutes later, we're doing, this. So, visionaries, we get great ideas, but some of them, it's the flavor of the month and it kind of disappears. So the integrator's role, the second in command's role, the number two's role is to determine where does that fit and what the priority is and how to roll it out, right? So strategic coach talks about the visionary makes it up. The innovation manager makes it real. And then what I would say, the integrator, second in command, would make it recur.
That's great. That's a great distinction. So
Hmm.
perfect. I like it. That's cool. Good. Now let's jump into some of the hiring stuff. You know, we're in June, July, kind of 2022. Things are crazy, as we know, many different aspects of craziness we've got going on. But what is the current state of hiring as you're seeing it?
Yeah, so right now, as I'm seeing it, it's the way it's been. That there's high demand for exceptional talent,
Mhm.
and you see entry level type jobs. You see signs now paying $15 an hour, $18 an hour, $22 an hour, and so you see that increasing. And even on the leadership level positions, we've seen an increase in the compensation to get great talent.
That's good. Yeah, you know, we
Hmm.
just hired a full-time marketing coordinator for our marketing company, and we had great candidates. We got a great hire. Ashley's been amazing so far, and I knew with that position, and this isn't going to necessarily relate to a lot of chiropractors because we tend to need people on site. But I opened up this particular position to anywhere, and they need to work 40 hours a week. I don't care if they do it at 5 a.m. or 5 p.m. Obviously, there's some things that are scheduled and they need to be on, but I found someone in Minnesota, and it's been great, and so that definitely helped. I felt like, but in the same respect, a year ago exactly, we hired our front, Kayla, who's been the best ever we've had in 12 years, and obviously local and has to come to work every day and that type of thing. And it's gone well. And to your point, there's a lot of jobs needed, and there's a lot of people looking for them. It can be a little bit tricky, but our goal here today is to kind of demystify that a little bit, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people listening can't really offer remote type work, right? It's a hands-on. But if you were able to offer a remote position like a marketing coordinator, you're going to get a lot larger candidate pool.
Yep.
If it's in person, you really want the right person. And Steve Jobs said this really well. He said a small group of A plus players can run circles around large groups of B and C players. And so if you had that right person in place and you paid them really well,
Yep.
they could be much more productive
Mhm.
than someone who's an average employee.
Yeah, you know, and I think that's what I did well when I hired for my practice inside, on site was I just said, you know what, I'm not going to nickel and dime and play in that pool of candidates. No offense to that pool of candidates, but I offered more than what I would have in the past. And for the position, definitely was on the high end of it, but it was almost like I unlocked this new level of talent and found someone really good. And obviously, you can speak to this. The cost of turnover is so much more than paying $3 or $4 or $5 an hour more than you are kind of comfortable
Yes.
doing, right? What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they say the cost of a mishire is three times their salary. So if you're paying someone, let's just use round numbers, $20 an hour, that's about $40,000 a year. So the cost of that mishire is $120,000,
Yep.
right? So that's a lot of money. And so when you have that decision in place, you got to realize that much is at stake.
Hmm.
But the top employees are two, three times more productive than an average employee.
Yep.
So it's over a couple dollars. You're not
Mhm.
going to regret paying someone above market to get that A player.
Yeah, and healthcare offices, and I'm just going to generalize all of healthcare and step away from just chiropractic for a second, are so notoriously bad at hiring and nickel and diming and trying to find that $13 an hour. And we go to these doctors' offices, and you're
Mhm.
just like, oh my gosh, like that's your person representing the front of your office, and they may be saving $6 an hour or $8 an hour. In their mind, they're saving that. Like, it's just
Mhm.
amazing if they would truly understand that. That's what I want my audience to get is that
Mhm.
there's a lot of research done by huge, massive research companies and companies in general on what you just mentioned about either the cost of bad hiring or the ROI on great hiring. And it's just, there's no way around it. It is 100% the case. And you got to start looking at that next level of where you can find good talent. And it may, especially nowadays, and depending on where you are located, it's not going to probably be $13 an hour. So I think that's a
Mm,
great point. So thanks for that.
yeah. Yeah. We don't want to be, penny wise and pound stupid, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and
To use an old expression.
it's great. And it's notorious in chiropractic and just healthcare in general. And obviously many other professions. We see it
Mhm.
everywhere. All right, docs, here is a new opportunity for you from Darcy Sullivan of Propel. She is our SEO specialist in helping out many chiropractors with their search engine optimization and making sure Google is finding you and getting you new patients. It's amazing how many new patients chiropractors can get and are getting when they do the SEO right and a few other things. And Darcy is offering a free SEO workshop just for chiropractors, and you can sign up for that at bit.ly/propelmcm. That is bit.ly propelmcm, modern chiropractic marketing, right? And so check out that link. And we're going to have you go over 5 SEO secrets to owning the first page of Google without buying ads. And Darcy's going to give that free workshop, 1 hour, to really help grow your practice and start churning new patients from the ever mighty Google, which is still king in the online marketing. So check that out at bit.ly/propelmcm for the 1 hour free workshop. Hey doc, are you moving office spaces, or you're a startup with your own new space, or you're like me where you need renovations because it's starting to look a little worn after about 10 years like ours is? Crossfield's Chiropractic Office Design is here to elevate you wherever you're at, and they're going to help maximize your space and flow. They're going to really help attract and retain patients, and this is going to have a great ROI on your investment when you increase that patient experience. So check out Chiropractic Office Designs by Crossfields, and we have a special link for modern chiropractic marketing listeners, and that is www.chiropracticofficedesign.com/Kevin-Christie. And with that, you're going to have discounts. We're going to have direct links to a mega bundle of free resources, and you can check them out, and you can get 15 of our most popular floor plans, 5-phase checklist for a startup office, 5-point designer checklist to evaluate your current office image. And there's 30% off on all online products when you go to www.chiropracticofficedesign.com/Kevin-Christie. So perfect. All right, cool. So let's transition a little bit. Aside from the dollar amount you're paying, how can small businesses improve talent acquisition and really getting the selection of that talent correctly? What are some of your insights on that?
Yeah, so your brand in the marketplace is key, right? So if, here in Columbus, we have BMW Financial, we have Intel coming in, we have Amazon, they have great brands, so they're not struggling to attract talent, right? So as small companies, they may not know of, Tony's Pizza Shop, right? Or of XYZ chiropractic office. So we really have to improve that brand. And you should have a part of your overall budget invested in your employer brand, and not just in how to attract patients to your office, but also how to attract employees. So that is key. It's really a marketing issue to attract the right talent. And so we recommend, being, pretty, don't mind spending a few bucks to advertise the position. The other thing is crafting a position profile to attract the right people. So if we compare our position profiles that we do with our clients versus what our clients can do for themselves or competitors, we will get 2 to 3 times more candidates because of how that job description is written. So one of the keys is you want to articulate your culture in that job description and what the behaviors, traits, and values are of the person you're seeking. And so what that'll do is that'll repel individuals that don't want to work to your office, but it's also going to attract individuals that say, man, I've been looking for an office like this my
Mhm.
whole life. This is me, and I want to work there. And my team hears that every day from our clients who are like, they're applying for an integrator role in Minnesota or in,
Mhm.
California or here in Ohio. And so that's what you should be hearing from your candidates. This is the office I want to work for. I read this description, and this is me. I got to work here.
That's great. Yeah, the description, like you said, it's kind of like a marketing messaging. You got to get clear on that and compel and repel, for
Hmm.
sure. And then even little things, I thought about it when we did our hiring. Is we have a really nice website, and we've got a great patient base, and we highlight that on our website. And I remember when we hired our front, she had checked out our website, and it looked legit. Our Google My Business looks great. We got a lot of reviews, like, pictures of the office. We have a nice office. So when they came in for the interview, they're not coming to some, rinky dink hole in the wall. Like
Hmm.
to your branding part of like, so much of that branding is going to attract patients, but it's also going to attract talent. And I've seen it firsthand. It's been interesting as my kind of reach within the profession has grown through this podcast and other things. And we've done a lot with professional athletes and stuff in our private practice. I've been able to really get good talent in the way of chiropractic preceptors, which is basically like an intern, and also doctors. And so it's been phenomenal from the high level talent acquisition all the way to our mid levels and staff. So I love that you brought up branding and obviously job description and really make it compelling. I think those are some early pitfalls that chiropractors tend to make. So perfect. Other than those pitfalls that I just mentioned, is there any other ones that you see currently in hiring?
Yeah, so common mistakes would be hiring based on someone's resume. So, the resume is the candidate's marketing piece, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, and so, 100% of all resumes have some sort of embellishment, exaggeration on them,
Yeah.
and 48% have outright lies on them. And so we don't want to rely solely on the resume to make
Mhm.
our decision. Um, the second one would be hiring from a pool of one or hiring from a small pool. And so, we see that a lot. We're asked to evaluate candidates from our clients. Like, so
Mhm.
we have a couple different services, but for clients that do the work themselves, they reach out to our company, VisionSpark, and say, "Hey, we have Nancy. We're looking to hire Nancy." And we'll say, "Well, how many people do you have?" And besides Nancy, well, just one. Well, how many people did you interview? Just one. How many people applied? Just one. And so that's usually a pitfall
Yeah.
in hiring. So those are a couple other pitfalls.
Mhm.
Not having a process. You want a process. You have a process for your patients coming in the door and how the process for their payments, and you also need a
Mhm.
hiring process.
Yeah, I got a question on that, and it came up when we did our last round of hiring. And obviously, it's going to be a different process if you're hiring a high level an integrator for a company versus say maybe like the front desk for a chiropractic
Hmm.
office. And so let's gear it more towards that. So not a doctor in your office. That's going to be a little bit more of a I don't want to call it dragged out process, but it's gonna be a little lengthier.
Hmm.
But there's got to, and I want your thoughts on this. There's probably a delicate balance of, say, when you're hiring a front desk, is if your process is too long for that position, do you risk losing good interviewees?
Hmm.
If it's too short, you run the risk of hiring someone that's not really that ran through your process appropriately. What's that sweet spot? It's
Yeah,
I know it's
it's
not
a
perfect.
it's a good question, and I was answering this question the other day to a workshop I was leading, and there's the old adage, hire slow, fire fast, right?
Yeah.
And so if we hire too slow with the demand for great talent, we're going to lose that. So
Yeah.
the answer to the question is you have to hire slow faster, right? And so what I mean by that is you have to expedite the process.
Mhm.
So you want to be as thorough, but you
Yeah.
don't want to drag it out, right? So, some of our searches, our process can go really fast because we are doing the interviews and the assessments and the
Mhm.
the cultural fit steps very quickly. so we can button it up and so we don't lose the great candidates.
Yeah, to that point, I had an interesting experience when we hired Ashley, our marketing coordinator. Myself and Dr. Jesse were doing the interviews. I was doing the first one, and he would do the second one over Zoom. And I remember telling him, I was like, "Man, I think I'm going to get Ashley this Colby, and I'm going to expedite this a little bit." And she did everything quickly, which I always like when they're responsive. And so it just was going really good. And he still had two more interviews on the books for like the following days. And by the end of the day, I was like, I think I just want to offer the job. And he said, like, well, what about the other interviews? It's like, well, still keep them going. And he brought up a good point. He's like, you're afraid of losing her, huh? I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, that's probably a good sign that she's the one to hire. And so I ended up expediting the process with her, and she was very responsive. And then I offered it to her, and it all worked out well. Was I right in that thinking, or?
I think that's, a good thought. Like if you're like, you're worried about losing someone, that you're onto something. And I think were wise in having her take the Colby. And if the Colby lined up, I mean, we use a totally different assessment that's much more geared towards hiring,
Mhm.
but you definitely want to use data. And I think with this day and age where you may have three solid candidates and you have a favorite and you offer it to your favorite candidate and they turn you down because they have another offer, right? So then you don't want to let the other two loose because, right? So you kind of want to hedge your bet a little bit.
And that's what we did. I was like, keep them on the books, do the interviews. I don't know, she may not accept it, or she may accept. I've had it before in the past where they accept it and then a day later they don't, because again, something else came in that tickles their fancy. So that's what we ended up doing, and it worked out great. So it's always delicate, but it was fascinating to go through that process, because it was actually the first time I ever hired someone remotely, and only through Zoom interviews, not in person. So it was definitely tricky for sure. You mentioned a different assessment that you like. Which assessment is that?
So it's our assessment here at VisionSpark. It's been around a long time, and what's different about it is it measures someone's mental aptitudes. So how they think and their critical thinking skills and problem solving skills, their memory retention. Do they retain information when you tell them? Their vocabulary, their attention to detail. So it really illuminates things that a lot of interviewing and a lot of other assessments don't measure. And that's really important. So if you're hiring a bookkeeper and they don't have a high attention detail, it's not going to be a good fit. And you kind of laugh about that, but we actually had a client that reached out to us and they had an internal recruiter. We put these three controller candidates through our process, and we said, don't hire any of them. And they end up hiring one, and they called us 6 months later and they're like, Alec, we made a huge mistake. It's cost us $500,000. We had to let them go. And so that's how our assessment is a lot different than a lot of other assessments out there. I mean, it also has the personality, the affective as what it in terms of their organizational skills and their energy level and their motivation and their process orientation. Are they really creative? Are they process? Are they impromptu? Or are they planful? And so it measures those types of things as well.
That's awesome. I'll have to get my hands on that. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's a great assessment. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we would be happy to offer anyone listening a complimentary assessment, so they can test drive it for their practice. So I don't know how you want to
Yeah, I'll
share
get it in the
that.
show notes for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
So that's awesome. Appreciate that. And I won't take up too much more of your time today, but kind of segue into, what are your thoughts on, say, incentives and also retention? Because I know that's another issue.
Mhm.
You've got that, let's call it an A player. And how do you incentivize them, fascinate them, and obviously keep them long term?
Yeah, so those are great questions. So if someone's an A player at any level, they will be motivated to do a great job, right?
Mhm.
So offering them an extra bonus is not going to necessarily get them to work harder, but it may help in retaining them. And so by offering a bonus, you have their pay and a bonus, so you have like a fixed cost and a variable cost. So that may help you from a financial standpoint. I would keep the bonus structure really simple, and incentivize the behavior that you want to see, right? So oftentimes where we see that with the integrator, second in command types roles, it's really around business performance, which is usually profit, right? So they have a base salary, and it's really simple. The other thing to note is really important is the culture and the relationship with the manager that's in place and the people. So, the old expression, people don't leave, they don't leave jobs, they leave bosses, right?
Yeah.
And so that manager, the supervisor, the chiropractor, they have to really create an environment where they want to stay. So that culture is super important. They need to feel valued and respected. They need to feel like they're being heard. They have the equipment to do their job correctly, and so that is super important.
Yeah, it was interesting. I had a little back and forth messaging with a colleague of mine, and he was reading a book. I don't even know the name of the book, but and he had just recently been to Europe, but it was a section there talking about how, like, in Italy, people are really involved with their families and their towns, and there's just like a lot there. And in America, people really have isolated themselves from much of their family, just in the sense of we move all around. And they did like studies showing basically most Americans rather be at their office than even at their home or town or city. And we were kind of joking around about that. And I said, well, I think, ultimately, going to an office that's fun to work at, that is kind of like the modern village for people, right? Like where you're
Mm-hmm.
hanging out with these people all the time, and you've got your backs and forths and your relationships, and you're joking around and you're working together, your team, like the struggles, and like all those things that you would have in your old school Italian village maybe is now in your office in America. And so if you can create a really good culture in that, people enjoy going to it and having, a lot of things fulfilled in that. And so I think people have to look deeper when you're talking about retention, right? Where it's obviously the bonuses are great and all that, but what's the culture? You mentioned it, like, what's the culture like at your office?
Mm-hmm.
And so I just enjoyed that back and forth I had with my colleague there. That was
Yeah,
interesting.
that's really interesting. You see, along those lines, you see, some offices, you saw this trend pre-COVID where, there was pool tables and kegs, and,
Yeah.
you can grab a beer late in the day, and you had ping pong tables, and, it was kind of the place to hang out.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's super important. Core values, like making sure
Mhm.
you have your core values, hire based on your core values, fire based on your core values. That really sets precedent. And what I always like to say on that is you can teach what you know, but you replicate who you are, right? So, and so as a leader, we need to replicate the core values of our
Mhm.
company.
Yeah, that's huge. That's so foundational. I don't think enough chiropractors have done that, and that's obviously you're just foundational for everything from hiring to your patient base, and them realizing what your core values are, and shouting at the top of the mountain for you and your practice and sending everybody there. It runs the gamut for the practice. So I think that's great. Some of the things we've done in our practice, aside from having really trying a good culture, which we actually, I brought the three of us doctors to an event in Atlanta, and it was all about culture, and that was really good. We had a good time, and we really try to lay the foundation of the culture. We definitely have a bonus system in place that's simple and fair. We have we've added a 401k with matching, so we've done that. And then recently, about 4 months ago, we started a healthy meal delivery service where each week everybody gets like 2 or 3 meals, uh, healthy meals that are delivered to the office, and so everybody kind of likes that. It doesn't cost a lot. It's not cheap, but it's just something that um, everybody's been really appreciative of, and so that's been good. So we're just
Yeah,
always
I love
looking at
that.
little things, because that's what people are valuing now. Would you say that, like, it's obviously the money is kind of the table stakes for life and
Hmm.
job, but people are a little more nuanced now with what they're trying to get from work. Would you agree?
And I think your healthy meal idea is part of your culture, right? So
Hmm.
you're an advocate of health, right? And so, we may be the opposite here at Vision Spark,
Hmm. Yeah.
but we have one of our cultural pieces is that we have snacks in
Hmm.
our cupboard, and so you can have chips and
Yeah.
dark chocolate, and there's some healthy ones and unhealthy ones, and so we make a joke. We put that
Mm.
in our ads. We're like, we love dark chocolate and coffee, and people are like drawn to that.
Yeah.
And one of my employees is like, I was so excited to see that. I had to pay for a cup of coffee where I was at, and here you offer,
Hmm.
that there's an abundance of snacks and drinks we could have here.
Yeah, it's the small things. Yeah, we have a nice espresso machine, coffee machine, all that type of stuff. And it's just in the kitchen. And yeah, so it's just, try not, again, it goes back to that nickel and diming, yeah,
Hmm.
it adds up over the year, but I think otherwise you're just spinning your wheels with retention issues. So
Hmm.
cool. Awesome. I really appreciate your time. How can they find you? I know probably visionspark.com, but anywhere else or
Yeah, so our web address or domain is visionsparksearch.com. So visionsparksearch.com, and they can reach out to us, and there's all sorts of information on our website.
Mhm.
And if they want to reach out to me directly, my email is alec@vision-spark.com.
Perfect. And I'll make sure in the show notes we give that little free resource you had for us. And I can't thank you enough. This is such a important topic. And I really want our audience to take it seriously as far as the financials of it and how important it is to invest in it, for your long-term growth. So thanks for your time today, Alec.
Thank you. Really appreciate it, Kevin.
That is it for this week's episode. But before you leave, check us out at www.modernchiropracticmarketing.com for all kinds of free resources such as blogs and the podcast episodes. We've got online courses. You can check out the Chiropractic Success Academy there, which is an amazing online coaching system for you at a very affordable monthly rate. There's a free online course on the modernchiropracticmarketing.com website, so check that out. If you're interested in some one-on-one coaching, we can do that as well. We have all kinds of resources for you there, and we would also truly appreciate if you could rate and review this podcast if you're getting valuable information out of it. I can't thank you enough, and we'll see you next week.